Hey everybody, it's Jeff Antoniuk. Welcome to Digging Deeper Jazz. Well, today I want to get you into the voice leading Hall of Fame. We're going to talk about what voice leading is and look at some really tangible examples and talk about how it gets into your playing. Now, in one or two of the past 100 or so Digging Deeper videos, I've talked about voice leading a little bit, and this is one of the things that we can't talk about too much. So you've heard me talk probably about jazzwire.net. So that is where I have a couple hundred people from around the world, countries all over around the world, working together in a community. It's not just the Jeff show at Jazzwire. We're working together as a community. And we've been talking about voice leading there and these ongoing conversations. Voice leading isn't something you watch a 10-minute video on and now you have it and now you do it. It's not really that. It's something that we have to keep digging into. And so many good conversations were coming up at Jazzwire that I thought I'd sort of pull some of them out and bring them here for you folks, get you excited about this, and then we'll see you at Jazzwire. And by the way, use the code DIGGINGSPRING. You'll get 50% off registration. Okay, what is voice leading? So look at the sheet here. And what I did is wrote out a great voice leading line over a classic tune, a song called Bernie's Tune. And what we're doing is trying to find a line that connects the chords. So when we go from one chord to another, how can we connect them best? So there's some good rules about voice leading. Very often voice leading notes are chord tones. We try to move by half step wherever possible. Whole step is okay. We don't really want to move by anything other than a whole step or anything larger than that. So let me just play this and you can get a sense. The idea is this is a little line that goes through the chord changes of this tune. This is the A section of Bernie's Tune. So the name voice leading actually comes from writing for the voice, writing for choirs, and especially an a cappella choir, a choir that has no accompaniment. They just have themselves a bunch of voices. If you write wide intervals for that choir, a less experienced choir is going to get out of tune and they're going to lose the center of the pitch and they may end up in a different key than they started, even though they're sort of all together. So people learned hundreds and hundreds of years ago that when you change chords, have a voice move to a very nearby note in the next chord, and that's very, very helpful. So it turns out that's great for playing and improvising jazz or composing music for that matter. So this was one of those questions that came up at Jazzwire in one of the more novice communities, the green community. The good question of like, well, I've got the voice leading line. What do I do with this thing now? You just heard me play it. Now what? Great, I know what voice leading is. So to me, the analogy is it's a path through the forest. It's a tried and true way to get from here to there. And a good path through the forest is actually quite scenic. It'll be some interesting things. You might see a waterfall over there. You might see a bear over there. Too interesting, maybe. So that idea of it's a path through the forest. What do you do with a path? Walk on it. It's beautiful. Walk on that path 50 times, 100 times. Get used to the path. At some point, you may choose to leave the path. Are you going to just walk off perpendicular straight off into the middle of nowhere? That's a gutsy move. You may not want to do that. Maybe you'll walk off the path for 30 seconds and come back. You can still see the path over there. That analogy is fantastic for what you want to do. You want to stay near the path, but maybe you can find some interesting things that people won't quite see from the path. That is what voice leading is about. So first of all, we developed this skill of finding a voice leading line through chord changes. Is there just one? No. There's an infinite number of paths through the woods. There are many paths through this tune. Of course, that's what we're getting into in the red community at Jazzwire, is investigating on various songs What are various voice leading lines we can choose? In the blue community, where the semi-pros are hanging out at Jazzwire, we were looking at a Wayne Shorter melody and realizing that his melody, the bridge of Speak No Evil, happens to be this amazing, crazy, quirky voice leading line that ascends through the changes in a Wayne Shorter kind of way. Quirky guy that he is. So we're looking at it at all these different layers. And so for today, we're going to take this one path through the forest. This is a simple, obvious path through this particular tune. And now let's see what we can do with it. So look on the sheet at example number 2. And we can see in those first 2 measures of item number 2, there's a lot of A in there. In measures 3 and 4, my voice leading line leads to A flat. Well, there's still 2 or 3 A flats in that next measure, but there's other stuff in there. But the A flat shows up at the beginning of the measure. If we look at the 5th measure of example 2, we're looking for a G. And do we see a G? Yeah, we see a lot of G in that measure. It wasn't the first thing that was in there, but we still see the G. In the next measure, we actually found a note that stays the same between chords. So we're looking for that G again. And yes, it shows up a number of times there. So you can see the line stays through my example, my etude, my improvised solo here. It stays there, but I'm also able to move around. So let me play this for you, and then we'll talk a little bit more on the other side. All right, so perhaps you can intellectually see that line that sort of was going through there. Perhaps you can hear it. That's the ideal thing. But actually, that's the thing with voice leading lines. When you listen to a great Sonny Rollins solo or a Pat Metheny solo or fill in the blank with your favorite musician, jazz musician, you're hearing voice leading. You just don't know you are. It's there. I love watching movies. There's a lot of things going on in a scene of a movie, from the lighting to the direction to the script to the everything else. I don't know any of that stuff. I'm enjoying the scene that I'm watching. I don't know the 10,000 brilliant decisions that went behind that scene. So this is happening all the time with great solos. So that's pretty cool. Now let's look at, where did I get these other notes? So what did I do with the voice leading? What did I do with that path? So now if you look, item number 2, look in the first measure. And what are all the notes that aren't the A, my voice leading note? So what I notice is whoever the genius was that wrote this thing out, man, I want to thank him, chord tones, right? Every note that isn't that A is a chord tone from D minor 7. It's a D or an F or an A or a C. Interesting, okay? Let's go to measure 3 and 4, our B flat 7 chord. All the notes that aren't that A flat, our voice leading note, every single one's a chord tone. Are you beginning to see a pattern? Let's go on to measures 5 and 6. And so again, we see all the notes that aren't that G are chord tones of the E half diminished chord or the A7 flat 9 chord. Every single pitch. So if you look at all of example 2, you'll see that it is a chord tone solo. Every note is a chord tone from the chord above that measure. And further, what makes it not just sound like a jumble of correct notes? Now, that's where some folks at Jazzwire are, is they're to the point where they can play a chord tone solo. They can really make the changes, but it's not sounding like music yet. What do we do about that? Well, we're not connecting the chords. We're just saying words, but we're not making sentences. Or maybe they're lucky enough to be saying sentences in music, but this sentence and that sentence don't have anything to do with each other. So it sounds a little rudimentary or bizarre that there's all these non sequiturs going on in their solo. How do we connect them? Voice leading. You got it. You got it. So how did I connect this chord tone solo? By making sure that little thread, that path through the woods was here. So that is the power of voice leading. So I'd love to send you this PDF, and on it are some of the rules, the suggestions for what voice leading is. Moving by a half step whenever possible. Common notes are great, actually, with voice leading. Moving by a whole step is also possible. Half step's better. Moving by much more than a whole step, not great. So there's some other pointers there for finding voice leading lines. And now, I keep mentioning Jazzwire, but it's so cool, the stuff that's going on. So we had, just this week, the community at Jazzwire had 500 posts. I counted them up because I couldn't believe how many there were. The people that are posting examples of them playing and posting examples of, hey, what do you think of this voice leading line? Or I'm playing this song, is this a good voice leading line? And other members chiming in and offering their suggestions or offering their corrections, and me chiming in and saying, oh, have you thought about this voice leading line? And then people playing. And so that's the deal. That's where this interesting 10 or 15 minute video is interesting. You get it. Now you have an idea of how to go forward, but then it's easy to lose momentum. It's when you don't have people around you. So that's kind of what the big deal is. So I would love to send you this PDF, and you can get started with this tune and this voice leading line. I would love for you to find your own voice leading lines through these tunes and then start improvising with them. Let me play a little bit, and I'm going to play around this voice leading line in item number 1. And we can go on and on and on like that. So as I was playing, I had that first voice leading line in my head. Here's the thing. If I had one of the many other voice leading lines through these changes in my head, I would have played something that sounded really quite different. It would have informed my decisions. So that's pretty slick. So I really want to thank all you Digging Deeper folks out there. And there's someone I really want to thank. I want to give a shout out to Debbie, a improvisation and piano instructor in Santa Barbara, California. Debbie watches these videos really, really regularly. And, you know, to have a pro like that who's checking this stuff out and chiming in and offering great suggestions on Facebook is where she sees this. I love it. Debbie, thank you so much for the great comments. And every week, about 50, 75, 100 comments and requests for PDF and everything coming in. So the fact that I know there are those great musicians out there who are enjoying this information and wanting to move ahead in your playing. So I'm so happy to be offering this information to you. Please feel free to touch base and definitely make your way to jazzwire.net. Use the code DIGGINGSPRING, get 50% off registration. And I want to be working with you, and I want you to be working with this amazing community that we have. There's nothing that can replace that. So do some voice leading. I want you in the Voice Leading Hall of Fame. I will see you next week. Take care.